back to Debating Metal. As always, I'm Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, and my co-host is Chris K. When it comes to the music business, not many artists can claim to have had two successful careers, let alone one. Artists like Ozzy Osbourne and Sammy Hagar are examples of artists who've had multi-platinum success, first in a band and then as solo artists, with Sammy even joining an already successful band and making it even more successful than before.
Another example of this is Dave Grohl, who first came to prominence as the drummer of the highly successful and influential grunge band Nirvana. After taking some time off to mourn the loss of his friend and bandmate Kurt Cobain, Dave reemerged with his new project, Foo Fighters. After 11 studio releases, 3 EPs, 1 live album, and a variety of compilations having sold over 32 million albums worldwide, we bring you Foo Fighters Greatest Hits.
But before we begin, I just want to remind you that if you haven't done so already, please click subscribe or like on your favorite podcast platform and get our new episodes as soon as they come out every week. So now sit back, relax, turn it up to 11 as we give you the ultimate Foo Fighters Greatest Hits. So Chris, I'm not the biggest Foo Fighters fan in the world, and not because I dislike them. It's just never really gotten into them. I like their popular stuff, but I'm never really like, I love Foo Fighters. Like, I'm not John from work who is, who fly all over the country to see the Foo Fighters, but I like them. And what's your take on Foo?
So I guess one of my first exposures to them was on Saturday Night Live. And I mentioned this to you the other day, where Christopher Walken, there's a story where he asked them, is the emphasis on the Foo or the Fighters? And and they said Fighters. So he says, ladies and gentlemen, Foo Fighters. And so, they were a band that when I was younger, I liked a little bit of grunge stuff. We've talked about that before. We did a multi-part grunge episode. Nirvana was definitely on the radar for me, and I just never really paid much attention to them until I got older, and I saw Dave Grohl in things like on TV shows and doing interviews and that kind of stuff. And he was just such a cool guy, so relatable, just a kind-hearted dude. That I really actually came to like him before the band. And then as time went on, I really gravitated towards some of the songs we're going to talk about. And while they're not one of my top bands or anything, there are a lot of songs that I really do enjoy by the band. So,
and I agree with you on that. The whole thing with Dave is an incredibly gracious and kind person, like you said. He's one of these guys that you just can't help but like. It's almost like there's nothing he does that you can sit there and say, oh man, that guy's an asshole. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to sit there and say that guy's a jerk.
No, if you haven't seen it, I recommend. So there's a show on YouTube called Hot Ones, where this guy Sean interviews guests while they're eating hot wings, each one hotter than the last. And so it sounds silly, but he really gets to the heart of the matter with these people. Like he really studies them and gets to know, them through this experience, because they're open, they're vulnerable by eating hot wings, And so
they're getting their fucking mouth ripped apart.
Yeah, it's really interesting to watch, because you would think it's just silly, but no, like it's some of the best interviews I've ever seen. And the episode with Dave Grohl was just amazing. So if you ever get the chance, to sit down and just watch that, I would recommend that to everybody listening.
And the other thing I like about, say, Dave Grohl, he doesn't take himself seriously whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure.
And that really does show, because when he talks about what kind of musician he is, he's like, I've never studied guitar. All I do is I play guitar the way I play drums. I bang the shit out of it, and it's literally like he's showing this guy and he's just like hacking away as a guitarist, but it works. And then, on top of that, you see this guy, he's scruffy, sometimes he has a beard. He hasn't really not had a beard in a long time. And he's got the long hair, and he's just got this really soulful voice that's really it's almost like you can't put the two together and sit there and say, oh yeah, that's Dave Grohl. There's something about his voice that's kind of special, really.
Yeah, no, he has a great voice.
So Foo Fighters, when they came about, like, I had no idea in 1995 that the Foo Fighters were even a thing. And, it was the beginning. 1996 was kind of the beginning of a lot of turmoil in my life. And, some of it self-inflicted and some of it not. But I kind of went through a period of the early Foo Fighters where I had no idea that who they were. I had no idea, who was in the band. Nothing. I mean, like I told you the other day when we were talking about this, my first thought of, Dave Grohl's in the Foo Fighters. I knew he wasn't drumming, but I just thought he was a guitar player. I had no idea he was a singer. None whatsoever. I was like, that's his voice? Wow. But there we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was just I was always kind of paying attention to that scene, even if it wasn't something that I specifically listened to. I mean, I really just enjoy learning about bands and their history and stuff like that. So I think somewhere along the way I probably watched a interview or documentary style video or something like that where I got a little bit of a fill-in of who the Foo Fighters was and what they were about. And, it just I always knew, but I never really paid a ton of attention. So
Right. Okay. Totally understand. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not a big fan. I like their music, enjoy it, but it's not something that I go out of my way to purposely listen to unless I'm in a mood that requires that kind of rock music. All right. So for all the new listeners out there, this is the way it's going to work. Chris and I are going to announce our 15 Foo Fighters Greatest Hits, the ones that we've chose. Whichever songs are duplicated on both our lists, those automatically make the ultimate greatest hits. Whichever songs don't make the list, we're going to debate and we're going to have rounds to determine which songs fill the rest of the remaining spots. So how that goes is the first round, we each going to choose a song from our own list that we want to keep. Then the second round, we're going to each choose a song from our own list that we are willing to drop. And then in the third round, we're going to pick a song from each other's list that we want to keep. And in the fourth round, we're going to pick a song from each other's list that we're willing to drop. And then we start all over again if we have any remaining spots available. Usually it comes down to having to pick one song from each of our lists and then kind of say, which one do we want to keep. Sometimes there's actually 4 songs for one spot. So it's pretty depending on how many songs we've crossed over, the debate can lead different ways. So last week I did a lot of talking and you announced your list first. So I'm going to go ahead and announce my list first this week.
all right.
Okay. So my Foo Fighters Greatest Hits goes as follows. And like we always say, it's not necessarily in chronological order, but because of the way we do our research, it ends up being in chronological order. All right. Number 1 for me is This Is a Call off of Foo Fighters. Number 2, I'll Stick Around off of Foo Fighters. And number 3, Big Me from Foo Fighters. Number 4, Monkey Wrench from The Color and the Shape. Number 5, My Hero. Number 6, Everlong, also both from The Color and the Shape. Number 7, Learn to Fly from There Is Nothing Left to Lose. Number 8, All My Life from One by One. Number 9, Times Like These from One by One. Number 10, Disenchanted Lullaby from One by One. Number 11, Best of You from In Your Honor. Number 12, The Pretender from Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. Number 13, No Son of Mine from Medicine at Midnight. Number 14, These Days from Wasting Light. And number 15, Under You from their newly released album, But Here We Are. So that's my 15 greatest hits for the Foo Fighters.
Well, there's some I'm actually surprised we crossed over on, and then others that I'm I guess we're kind of out there to some degree, so I'm not surprised about it. But there is a lot of crossover. And being that we haven't really ever talked about it, that is kind of interesting. So, just like you, this is mostly in chronological order. So my number 1 is Everlong off of The Color and Shape, followed by My Hero, also from the same album. Learn to Fly and Aurora from There Is Nothing Left to Lose. All My Life, Times Like These, and Disenchanted Lullaby from One by One. Best of You from In Your Honor. The Pretender from Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace. Word Forward from their own Greatest Hits album. These Days from Wasting Light. Walk, also from Wasting Light. Love Dies Young from Medicine at Midnight. Rescued and Under You from But Here We Are.
All right. Well, I like your list, and I see where we have some interesting crossover. So we have 10 songs that crossed over. We have 5 spots to fill. On the 10 songs, to my surprise, and then I figured you were just as surprised, we both picked Disenchanted Lullaby, which is pretty interesting. And we also both of us picked Under You, which for being a new song is interesting that we both picked that one.
So the new album just came out recently, and there's been a few singles that have been out for weeks at this point. Under You was one track that I instantly connected with, and I really liked. The same with Rescued. I think there's just something really strong about this new album, and obviously they're coming off of the passing of Taylor Hawkins, so there's a lot of emotion going on there. And Dave is playing drums again on this album, so it's very interesting to hear. And I'm honestly really liking this album.
It's an interesting album. I mean, it's definitely there's a melancholy to it in some places. You can tell there's a little bit of angst and anger somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And you would expect that, but for the most part, it's cathartic, very similar how the first Foo Fighters album was cathartic for him. This one is cathartic for him again. And it's funny because there's a lot of, to me, from listening to this, there's a lot of similarities between this album and the first Foo Fighters album. Between some of the sounds, some of the way he's playing guitar, some of the songwriting has got some similarities. It's very strange to me. And obviously he's many years down the road in terms of maturity, in terms of his ability to play. But there's something to me that I said, this sounds, there's something that reminds me of the first Foo Fighters album. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. There is something that is fueling the feeling behind the album, and I'm sure it has something to do with that specific thing. Losing friends. And this is obviously not the first time. So,
right. Okay, so this is probably going to be pretty quick as far as filling the 5 spots available. So why don't we go ahead and get to it? Why don't you go ahead and pick a song from your list to keep?
So I'm going to pick Walk off of Wasting Light. It's a really good track, and if you haven't seen the music video, seeing the band members basically kung fu fight terribly is just delightful.
It's delightful. Like I said, early on, these guys just do not take themselves seriously, and that's just the greatest part about the Foo Fighters in general. Is they're so just down to earth,
Yes.
So, all right, for me, I'm going to pick a song off my list. I'm picking "No Son of Mine" from Medicine at Midnight.
Okay.
There was something I'm going to be dead honest in this particular case. Today was the first time I ever heard that song. Now, it did play in the background the other day, but didn't notice it. But I paid attention to the songs I was picking, and I picked that song and absolutely connected with it immediately.
It's a good song. It was one that almost made my list and didn't quite, but I'm glad to see it on here.
All right, so now we're going to pick a song from our list that we're willing to drop.
I'm gonna drop "Love Dies Young" from Medicine at Midnight. You just picked "No Son of Mine." That is a little bit of a factor, but also I like the other songs on my list better.
All right, so I'm going to drop because I mean all that's left on my list are 3 songs from the first album and Monkey Wrench. So I'm going to drop "I'll Stick Around" from the first album.
Okay. I think the other 2 songs that you have from Foo Fighters are actually stronger. So I would agree with that.
And so do they, because the other 2 songs are on their Foo Fighters Greatest Hits.
Oh, okay.
And so what's funny is, obviously, they've released their own greatest hits, but theirs was 16 songs long, and it included 2 new songs that had been previously unreleased, and 1 song that actually was an existing song that was a version that was previously unreleased. So, theirs technically is only 13 songs long compared to ours, which is going to be 15 songs. And we have newer albums to choose from. So there are some differences. But ours is the ultimate.
Yes, of course.
All right. So now it's your turn to pick a song off of my list that you're willing to keep.
Okay. So off of your list, I'm gonna keep "Big Me" from the first album. And part of that is it is very different sounding than a lot of the stuff that we have here. It's also very 90s, including the music video, if I remember, was very, very 90s. And there's just
Is that the one with the Mentos?
Yes. It's great. So, yeah, I'm going to go with "Big Me."
All right. Cool. I like that song. So looking at your list, you have Rescued, Word Forward, and Aurora left. Only because I know, since I had so many songs off of the first album, I know that, we kept one. One's probably, it's all that's left is 1 song from the first album on my list, and then Monkey Wrench from The Color and Shape. It's early stuff. Something about Rescued reminds me of the early stuff, so I want to keep Rescued.
Okay. I think it's a really strong song. It's sometimes it's hard to say when something's so new that you want to include it on the greatest hits, but that song's been out for, I don't know, a month or so at this point. It was the first single that was released, and
Right.
I think it's really strong.
Like I said, that was the song immediately hit me. I said something about this reminds me of the first album, so that's kind of why I'm attracted to it, even though I didn't put it on my list. That was something that connected me to it. All right, so now you need to pick a song off of my list that you want to drop. So I have "This Is a Call" and "Monkey Wrench."
Okay. So of the 2 you have left, I'm gonna drop "Monkey Wrench." It has that kind of like punk guitar sound where some of the other tracks that come around like the middle of the band that we honestly we both left off of our list feel a little bit more like this track. But there's a reason I didn't pick songs from that little middle era of the band either. So, yeah, I'm going to leave "This Is Call" open for still choosing.
Okay. So that leaves 2 songs off your list, "Aurora" and "Word Forward." And having kind of listened to them a little bit, I'm going to sit there and say that I'm going to drop off your list. I'm going to drop Aurora.
Okay.
So that leaves you with Word Forward.
Yes.
All right. So now, typically we would go back to round one, and it's a song that I want to keep and a song that you want to keep off our own list, but we only got one spot left. So it is now a battle between This Is a Call and Word Forward. So This Is a Call being the first song anybody ever heard from the Foo Fighters, or from Foo Fighters, excuse me, there's no the. And then Word Forward, at the time when they released their greatest hits, was basically the newest song that people had heard. But we're far from that album now.
So that's a valid point in being really the first song, and it is kind of that bridge between Nirvana and Foo Fighters. But I would say they've also come a long way since that first album, so it's not something that's necessary to have either. You know, they have quite a catalog that sounds, you know, very diverse. So I still think that Word Forward should be on there, but I'm open to your argument.
Well, my argument would be for This Is a Call. It's just because it's the first song that they ever put out. But I get, it's not their best song. But it is the first thing that they put out. As far as Word Forward, I mean, in all honesty, for me, in my opinion, it's not better than a lot of the songs that are on the list that we've got, but that doesn't mean anything because there's a variety for a reason. I'm open and I'm willing to let to put Word Forward on there just for the diversity of the album.
Okay.
I mean, I know there's probably a few Foo Fighters fans that are going to listen to this and going, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" But
I think that's just always the case, right? Like, there's always going to be people that are like,
well,
"My
there's
song's not on there."
I mean, there's a legion of Alter Bridge fans that hate you, so
I'm sure.
including me for leaving off a particular song.
Good,
But
good. Let the hate flow through you.
But anyway, yeah. So I'm okay with putting Word Forward on there.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, you get a win this week. Okay, so now we have come to the part of the show where we are going to put these songs in concert set list order. 15 songs. The first 12 are going to be the main part of the set. The last 3 are going to be the encore. We're going to go back and forth and choose a song. Choose a song to put into this list the way we want to hear a concert from the Foo Fighters. And then that'll give us the ultimate greatest hits. So, Chris, go ahead and start the show off. What song you got?
I'm going to start it with the opening from my favorite album, and that would be All My Life off of One by One.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very interesting because that's how they started their latest concert with that song.
Oh, really?
All My Life. Yes, All My Life was the opening track.
Well, that makes sense. It's a really strong opener.
I like it. All right. So, I'm going to do the same thing that they did, and I'm going to go with No Son of Mine at number 2.
Okay.
I love that riff is so cool, and it sounds like a riff that you're coming out of a song. And if you're coming out of the opener, I like that. I like the way that's going to flow.
Okay. So we're 3 songs in. I would probably go with something new or not necessarily slower here. Because, they're not like super fast. A lot of the bands we talk about, thrash bands and stuff like that. So they don't really have, lightning fast tracks or anything like that. Um. So, and I don't want to slow things down because a couple of the slow songs we have here, maybe like Disenchanted Lullaby, um, and Big Me. I don't think that this is the right time for them. I'm thinking more towards the middle for those. So, I'm probably gonna go with Rescued.
All right. That sounds cool.
Okay.
Number 3. I like it. I like it. I think it's a good spot for it.
All right.
Okay, so let's see with the songs we've got here. We've got a bunch still to fill. I'm thinking, what if we did Walk at this point?
Okay. Walk's one of those songs that's kind of interesting to me because I believe it's at the very end of that album. I'll have to look and double check that. But sometimes it's interesting to me that like bands will put one of their strongest songs at the end of an album. It a lot of times they're front loaded, right? But it just seems crazy to me sometimes to put it at the very end.
Walk is the last song on the album.
Yeah, and it's a popular one. I think it was a single.
All right, so it's your turn to fill in number 5.
All right, so we're at 5. We're not quite in the middle yet, but we're getting there. I think I'm going to go with Learn to Fly.
Okay, I can see that. So how about Times Like These at this point?
Okay, I think that works. So we're kind of in the middle, and I think this would be a good time to do some of the softer songs. So I think right here, let's do Disenchanted Lullaby.
Okay, I can go with that.
Which I think is actually the song that follows Times Like These on the album.
You are correct. Okay, so then let's see. How about we put in Word Forward right here?
Okay. I think that's a good place for it. Then I'm going to put Big Me next.
All right, so we've jumped straight from Word Forward to Big Me. Now it's my turn again. All right, so we're basically left with one new song, one relatively recent song, and I say relatively, I think it's 10 years old, or maybe a little less. I gotta check that fact out. And then the rest of them are pretty much like classics, if you're gonna look at it that way.
Yeah.
I was correct. Wasting Light came out in 2011. So these days is from Wasting Light. So that's already 12 years old. Holy cow.
I remember when that album came out too.
I know. Yeah. And kind of when it came out, I remember, listening to the local radio stations around here. The morning DJ for the Buzz, 94.5 The Buzz here in Houston, his name is Rod, and he loves the Foo Fighters. And the first single came out. If I'm not mistaken, the first single was that song "Rope." I think maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't, I wasn't impressed by "Rope," quite honestly. And I thought, Foo Fighters may have finally hit a dip in their career, but no, it still did well. And there's definitely some stronger songs on this album. So that being said, we have to pick some songs. And so we at Big Me, so we're closing in on the end of the set here. We've got 3 songs before the end of the main set, and then we got encores. And so we correctly have pretty much classics left. So, do you want to? I think we should go with These Days at this point.
Okay. Then I'm going to pick My Hero.
My Hero. Okay, so now I have the distinguished honor of closing out the main set. We've got The Best of You left, Pretender, Everlong, Under You. That's an interesting one. How about we go with Best of You to close it out?
I'm okay with that.
I mean, he's screaming to his people, the best of you.
And I would say one of their best songs. So I think it easily fits with, or biggest songs. I mean, not necessarily best, but definitely one of their biggest. So I think it fits very well there. I think people would be satisfied hearing that last if it was all they played, right? So,
right.
So that means I'm starting off the encore. I'm gonna go bold here, and I'm gonna start with Under You.
Oh, you're starting with Under You. Okay. You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that one.
I think it's a good enough track that you could start an encore with it, and people would still be happy.
And I'm gonna pick The Pretender.
I think you have
to go in the middle.
Because I was gonna,
right? We have to.
If you didn't, that means Everlong is the last song.
Yep, Everlong is the last song, and that's just the way it has to be. All right, Chris, go ahead and read it off.
Okay, so our concert starts off with All My Life from One by One, then No Son of Mine from Medicine at Midnight, Rescued from But Here We Are, Walk from Wasting Light, Learn to Fly from There's Nothing Left to Lose, Times Like These from One by One, Disenchanted Lullaby also from One by One, Word Forward from Greatest Hits, Big Me from Foo Fighters, These Days from Wasting Light, My Hero from The Color and the Shape, sorry. Best of You would end the set from In Your Honor. And then our encore starts with Under You from But Here We Are. Then The Pretender from Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. And closing things out will be Everlong from The Color and the Shape.
I can dig that, man.
I think it'd be
I really like that. I mean, any Foo Fighters show is pretty good, from what I understand. I would love to see them, really, just to say that I've seen the Foo Fighters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking at the set list that they provide on setlist.fm, they play a pretty long concert at 20 songs, so that's pretty cool.
I'd say so, and I'm familiar. Like, they do a lot of covers and different covers, so they don't stick to just one or two or this, and they do quite a few. They just have fun on stage. Yeah.
So I'm looking at their set list of the most recent concert, and they did a cover medley in the middle with Whip It from Devo, Judith from A Perfect Circle, and then March of the Pigs from Nine Inch Nails. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely, especially that grouping of songs.
Yeah. You know who else does a really cool cover breakdown, and not breakdown like metalcore, but they kind of take a point in the middle of the set to do this cover thing. Breaking Benjamin, I've seen them in concert a few times because they've been the opening act for some of the bands that I've seen.
Okay,
and they did a cover of Walk from Pantera.
Interesting.
So they medley it with Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall. Walk from Pantera, and I can't remember the other one. It was more like not as well known, but it's just interesting how they blend that all together. So you got Pink Floyd, Pantera, and I forgot what the other couple bands were, but they do this really cool, interesting stuff, and they come across live a lot better than they come across on regular recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have this their bass player at the time. I don't know if he's still with them. The bass player at the time, he has this. He does a kind of like a growl voice for the songs. He sings a song in the middle of the set, and it's like really fucking intense. And I'm like, this is pretty cool, actually. You would not think that from Breaking Benjamin because of the way they're kind of like a nerd band, but the bass player's intensely intense. I mean, he's really deep and he's fucking intense, but he's really good. Great bass player. And they put on a pretty good show. I mean, I was never had a problem seeing them because I'm like, oh, they're not bad in concert kind of thing, you know. But yeah, they do a cover thing in the middle.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's our 15 ultimate greatest hits of the Foo Fighters. That's going to bring us to our big four tonight, which is Foo Fighter songs. And for me, this is, I don't want to say difficult, but I kind of had to pick songs that I really didn't have a deep connection with. But that's okay. I mean, most of these songs are all pretty good. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go first so that, well, no, did you go first last time?
I don't remember.
I think it don't matter.
But you can go first.
I'll go first. All right. So for me, my big four Foo Fighters songs are number 4, These Days from Wasting Light. Number 3, All My Life from One by One. Number 2, The Pretender from Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace. And of course, number 1 has to be Everlong, but the Everlong I'm choosing is the acoustic version from Greatest Hits.
Okay.
That's a pretty cool version. I like that. You know, it just really strips it down to nothing. I like that. I love acoustic songs.
They have a few good acoustic versions of different songs. So yeah, that's a good selection. We don't have a lot of crossover. But we do have a one at least, I believe. Okay, so my number 4 is, like I said, I had an instant connection to this one, Under You but here we are. It really grew on me fast. So it's one of those that I'm really enjoying right now. And yeah, in some way in the future it might not be, but like right now, I would say I'd put it up there in their top songs. My number 3 is The Pretender. I think you had that at number 2.
Yes, you're right.
Okay. And then my number 2 is All My Life from One by One. That's a great opener. That's, again, why we picked it as number 1. And my number 1 is a song that means a lot to me, is Times Like These. And I think anybody who's been through tough times and made their way through it, that's a you know, maybe it's surface level, maybe it's cheesy, but I think it's one of the songs that you can feel the emotion behind, and it really, to me, stands out.
Surprised you didn't pick Everlong.
I like Everlong. I think I've been hearing it for such a long time. I've kind of grown out of it.
Understandable, and quite honestly, if I had to pick an honorable mention song, it would be No Son of Mine, because I instantly connected with that song, but I still want that, you know, I've added it to my playlist. So I want to grow with that song a little bit, but so yeah, that would have been like my number 5. But,
okay,
but cool. I like your list. You can't go wrong with it. I agree with the Under You part. I mean, I haven't gotten there yet with that song as far as, you know, really listening to it a lot, but I did know it was a good song, so that's why I put it on my list. So yeah, I like your list. Very good. All right. Well, that's our big 4 Foo Fighters songs, and that brings an end to this episode of Debating Metal.
To interact with us, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. If you listen to us on YouTube, be sure to leave us a comment and ring that bell to be notified when we post a new episode. And remember to tune in next week when we spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.